All right, welcome everybody to session 4 of Coding Live in Python. Today we're going to be working over dictionary literals. So what is a dictionary literal? A data type that holds a collection of properties where each property is an association between a name, key, and value pair. So here we have a couple of examples of what the format looks like. On the left side, you just see a dictionary in general. With the keys, notice that the keys are wrapped around quotation marks, whether that be single quotes or double quotes, doesn't matter. But keys must be wrapped around quotation marks, or they could be integers, as we've seen in prior problems. But preferably, you want to use a variable that you know what it is. You don't necessarily want to use a number, and you want to wrap it around in quotation marks. The value could be whatever. As long as it's a good data structure that still works with Python. It could be a dictionary. It could be a prior established variable. It could be a string, a list, and it could be another object. So let's go ahead and keep moving here. So we'll see that dictionaries are key value pairs. So a dictionary literal keys and values do not have to just be string data types. They can be other types as well. So there it goes into specifying this organization. We see that the name of the organization is Platoon. Notice the slide has all of the left sides without quotation marks. So this example here would fail. This example would only work if all of the keys were wrapped around quotation marks as well. So we see the topics that it teaches. We see that it has a list. And then we see the cohorts. We have a dictionary in 2020, and then it looks like this dictionary would have years with a list of the different cohorts that were taught in that year. Okay, so interacting with a dictionary literal. So let's use a simple dictionary literal. We have the organization. We have this values, and let's say we just want to access, a specific element in here. We want to do that through square brackets. So let's say I want to do print organization, square brackets name. And what this would actually print out would be, well, an error, because this does not have a closing parentheses. But if it did have a closing parentheses, it would print out code platoon. Okay, let's see. So we did that one. Now we can use this dictionary as well. And we can ask an in statement. But something to keep in mind when I have a list of different values or data types inside of a list, if I ask if something's inside of a list, it's going to check every single thing inside of that list and give me back a true or false. Well, with dictionaries, it works a little bit different. It's only going to check the keys when I ask, is this specific thing inside of organization? So here we see if name in organization print true. So, I mean, this could just be print name in organization. We would see either a true or false. Well, name itself is an organization. We see that it's a key in organization. But if I were to ask, is code platoon in organization, this would return false because code platoon is in a key. It's only a value. And we'll go over how we could just check if it's a value or if it's a key later on as we start working on our actual code editor. So let's move on to the next slide. So we see these built-in methods, and these are just basic ways that we can get different items out of our dictionary. And the reason why we wouldn't want to use square bracket notations, I'll go into that here shortly. And actually by shortly, I mean now. So let me grab all of this stuff and bring it over to our actual code editor. Okay, so here we are on lesson 4. And now let's take that example of the organization that we had. Where did you go? Here you are. Okay, and then we could take this example over here and start opening it up. So we have this organization. Seems things aren't necessarily working correctly. Let me wrap that in quotation marks. Okay, what's wrong here? Let's see. So invalid characters, it's unable to read the quotation marks from PowerPoint. Okay, and the same thing here. So let me grab this character, highlight all of them. Okay, so it almost fixed it. Some of them are still a little messed up. So let me see if I could fix it really quick. Okay, perfect. So now we see all those. And let's say in 2022, we had, I don't know, Romeo. What comes before Romeo? Let's say Papa. And let's say Quebec. I'm sure that's not how you spell Quebec. Okay, so now I have these couple of different things that I could work with. And maybe I want to add another thing here where I can say, well, I want to say employees. And inside of employees, I can have, and actually, it would make sense for employees to be within a list. So let's put that in there. And let's say instead of employees, well, I just have a dictionary that opens up. And inside of this dictionary, I have employees. And inside of employees, I have another list. And this one says Francisco, Adam, and let's say we have Raphael in here. Okay. So let me kind of format this a little bit better so that we can see what's going on here. Okay, so we have this list. And these are all of the items inside of the list. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so now let's go over why not to do something. Okay, there's something going on here with this curly bracket. It's probably because of the PowerPoint. So let me close that out. Okay. All right, there you go. So now it's running well. I have my organization. It's been set. We can see a little bit of information from there. So now let's say that I wanted to grab Adam out of there, right? Well, actually, let's go over what if I wanted to get something that didn't exist inside of the organization. Let's say this organization dictionary was extremely massive and I didn't know how to do it. So maybe I just want to check how many students are going through the organization. So I could check like the organization's maximum capacity, right? Well, let's say I just wanted to print organization. And then let's say I go, well, maximum capacity. What do we think is going to happen when I run this Python script?
It's going to say maximum capacity doesn't exist.
Right, it's gonna give me an error and it's gonna tell me it doesn't exist. Right, so here we see key error, maximum capacity. No idea what you're talking about, man. You're crazy. Okay, perfect. So this breaks my program, right? Maybe I want to say print the max capacity is. Now I have this information. Well, you see, when I'm running the script, remember, Python is a runtime script, meaning it goes line by line, executes its line until it meets an error or it meets a return statement or it just stops. Well, it runs, but then when it hits my error, it never touches the rest of my information. It's over. And maybe I don't want it to do that. Maybe I just want to continue it. I want to continue my script, but I can't do that using bracket notations. So instead, Python has this method that's specific to dictionary and objects and classes. We won't go over classes in this course, but classes are very similar to how dictionaries work. And I see this .get method. Well, what happens now when I run my Python script? Well, now it's able to execute all of my lines and it doesn't return an error. Instead, it just tells me none because it's telling me this doesn't exist. It's not inside of your organization. So I'm just going to give you none. Okay. So let's say I run it, it gives me none. And then someone else tells me, hey, if they don't have the maximum capacity in there, just say that it's 30. Well, I can pass a second argument to the .get method. And the second argument is telling it, well, if maximum capacity doesn't exist, just give me 30. So now when I run this, we see the max capacity is, instead of none, I see 30. And then I see now I have this information. Now it's important to note that nothing changed inside of organization. All right, so I could print the organization and I'm just going to print the keys here. This way we don't get too much information. When I run it, the keys are still the same as before. I didn't add a new key or a new value into my organization. I'm just saying, if this key doesn't exist, give me this default value so I can continue on with my program and nothing breaks. Okay, awesome. So that's .get. Now, let's say that if it didn't have this information, let's say I'm currently working for Platoon, but let's say I was designing an API for Platoon. And in my API, I can't remember if I created this key, maximum capacity, but I know that I want to create it if it doesn't exist. So what I can utilize is, instead of saying get, I can say the set default. And what set default is going to do is it's going to look for this key. If the key exists, it's going to give me the value of that key. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it and insert my second argument as its value. And it's going to return my second argument. So now when I run this script, we see that it still gives me 30. But now if we look at the keys inside of the dictionary, we see that maximum capacity is now included inside of the keys of the dictionary. Whereas .get didn't create a new value, set default did. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so now that we know that, and we know that much, let's say that inside of employees, there's supposed to be another, let's say instead of employees here, let's say that there's supposed to be a student key. So student key with the value of, I don't know, maybe let's say it's the entire thing throughout the entire year. So maybe around 300. So how could I do that? How could I, let's say for now, I don't want to create a new value. I just want to check if student key exists. And if it doesn't, I want it to give me the number 300. How could I do that?
Would it just be print organization?
All right, so print organization.
Dot get. And then what were we doing? Student key, comma 300.
So student, and then let's do 300. Okay, so this is gonna show me 300. Right? But if I were to include the student key now, and give it an actual value, let's say of 200 for simplicity's sake, and I run this, it should give me 200, but it still gives me 300. Why is that?
Wouldn't you want to change the .get to set default? Or no?
So that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that I'm looking for student in the wrong place. All right, because currently I'm saying .get and it's looking at these keys. And the last key in my organization dictionary is 2020. After that, it doesn't know, it never went into the dictionary that I have here.
Oh, I see where it ended now. Okay.
Yeah. So how could I get to this student? Okay, so let's break it down step by step. So we have this student key and value, and we see that it belongs to this dictionary. But this dictionary belongs to this list that's attached to the 2020 key. So how can I get this the list that's attached to the 2020 key?
So you would need to go organization. Oh, I'm sorry. So you're doing .get, I guess.
Mhm.
So you're looking for. If you're looking for a key, you're looking for 2020,
Right, perfect. So let's run that first.
and then sorry, go ahead.
No. So I see that. It's telling me nothing. So I wonder why.
Oh wait, so is cohorts the key? Sorry, so cohorts is the key.
Perfect.
My apologies.
So I send it to cohorts. Okay, so now we see.
And
Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. I was just gonna say the rest to get to, like, we're ultimately trying to get to student, right?
Right. Yeah. So how do I push forward now?
So you got cohorts, and then the key is 2020, so you could do bracket 2020.
Okay, so let's say that I have a bracket 2020.
But wait, the parenthesis is not a problem.
Let's check. Okay, so it takes me into the list and it takes me to the final dictionary. So it doesn't look like that's going to be a problem, but I do strongly recommend that we get out of the using brackets and start.
Okay.
.get.
So you just change it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so now I have 2020. So we're almost there. Now I see a list and I could see the student keyword inside of the dictionary. So how do I enter the dictionary that's inside of this list?
Well, you're trying to get to the fourth index of that list.
Okay, so let's see. We got index 0, index 1, index 2, and it looks
Oh,
like,
sorry, 3.
yeah. Nice. So I go to index 3, I run it. Okay, so now I do have just my employee key and my student key. So now the final part is getting the student. How do I do that?
So you want, so we're in a dictionary. Um, .get student.
Perfect. Nice. 200. Perfect. So now I'm going to remove this. And now this is what we're going to say. We're going to say, I want to see if this student is there. And if it's not there, I want it to give me 300. So how could I change this statement to meet these requirements?
So instead of the last .get, make that. Oh no, I'm sorry. You can still use .get and then just add the second parameter.
All right.
So comma and then 300.
Perfect, so I can just do that. So it's gonna check if that specific key exists. And if it does, then it'll return to me the value of that key. But because the key did not exist, it returned to me 300. So now I can, let's test it, right? I can add student in there and check what's happening on 15. Yeah, well, now it gives me 15, and we see that 300 never gets utilized. That's because student is a real value, and it goes to 15. Okay, perfect. And now let's say that I did want that student key, and I want it to stay there if it doesn't exist. I wanted it to grab me the value if it's already in there, but if it's not, I wanted to create a key and a value pair inside of this dictionary. How could I do that?
So if you and this is kind of a question,
Mhm.
but if, in our last dot get, if you have student for the second parameter, could you have organization dot set default?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry, I think you're breaking up. You're saying for the first.
Sorry, hold on. Let me take you off my headphones.
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me better?
Oh, way better. Yes.
Okay, so I was just saying, like, for the second parameter of the last dot get, so where it says 300 right now,
Mhm.
could you actually replace that with organization dot set default? And then make the default value 300?
Okay, so let's try that. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's gonna give me none. And let's actually print out the organization after doing that. Okay, so we see that.
Oh, so you needed to have like student, comma, right?
Yeah, so we want student comma 300, but instead of the dot get, we want to switch that for something else.
Okay.
Yeah, so instead of the dot get, we're actually going to use set default. And this way, when it runs through, we see that it creates the student key along with the 300, and it gives me the value of 300. Great. Now let's go over some iteration. So can anybody tell me, how can I iterate through all of the keys inside of a dictionary?
So if you said for I in, or actually for key, I'll just say it like that, for key in organization dot keys. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I could just print the key, right? Okay, well, let's run this. And we see that it does it. Well, I wonder what happens if I take off the dot keys. And does the same thing. So that's good. Now I know that I can isolate it. But now it makes me curious, right? If I can iterate through this and get the keys, well, what is it that dot keys is bringing to the table? Well, when I print the organization dot keys, well, that's actually just creating a list of the actual keys inside of it. When I iterate through by saying for key in organization, I'm not creating anything, nor am I creating through anything new. But when I say to go through dot keys, I'm explicitly telling it to make a new list that only holds the keys and iterate through that. Okay, so now, go ahead.
I got you, like, I understand.
Awesome. Yeah. So now let's go ahead and someone else tell me how I can go ahead and iterate through all of the values inside of a dictionary.
So then that would just be for I in organization dot values close in, yep, like that.
Perfect. Yeah. And then I could just print I, And we could see that that would just give me all of the values specifically. Great, so we see code platoon, we see a nonprofit, then we see our list, and then we see our dictionary, which is exactly what we expected. And just like before, well, if I print the organization.values, it does exactly the same thing that .keys did. It's actually creating for me a list of all of the values inside of the dictionary. And I wonder if I could just go ahead and utilize it kind of like with list methods. Okay, so we see that when I did this, right? I try to enter index 0 in there. And it's telling me, hey, dict values is an object. It's not something that's subscriptable. Well, I know that it almost looks like a list, but it's not interpreting it as an actual list. It's actually interpreting it as a class or an object. So this method isn't necessarily actually turning it into a list. So in order to do something like this, I just need to actually use data casting to turn it into a list. And now when I run it, we see code return. Okay. So that went over the .keys, .values. Now the last thing that we really have to go over is how can I iterate through both values at the same time? When I'm working through a list, I have the enumerate function, but how could I do it with dictionaries?
For key value. And organization dot items.
Perfect. And then I could just print the key and the value. And we could see that what that brings forward to us is both the key and the value. All right, and now if I go ahead and print the organization dot items, well, this is when something funny happens, right? At least I would expect to see list of lists. But in reality, what ends up happening is I see a list of tuples. So what's the difference between tuples and a list? Does anyone remember?
Yeah, so lists are immutable and tuples are not.
Right, perfect. So list
And then lists have brackets and tuples have parentheses.
yeah. So what that means to me is that this dictionary is saying, hey, these are the key pair values. But while we're doing this, you're not going to change any of these values. You can't just enter the actual value that I'm using or the valuable variable and try to give it a new name. It'll freak out if I do that. But what I can do is call the dictionary by the key and give that specific key a new value. This way I could change the second argument. So it's important to understand the difference of what you're working with. I can run comparisons on the value that I'm running through this because it's part of a tuple, but I can't do variable reassignment because again, it's part of a tuple. Okay, perfect. And that takes care of our dictionary lesson for the day. Perfect. Does anyone have any questions over dictionaries?
I got a code in the chat that, well, never mind. It disappeared.
Oh,
I hate having to use this iPad. It literally disappeared in the chat after I typed the whole thing.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, do you want to walk me through what the question was?
Yeah, I can. Can you run the dictionaries through like an index?
Oh, can I grab an
Yeah, like a specific one using index equals 0 while index is less than length, comma, or parentheses, data list, semicolon for key in data list, brackets, index, and then just print that and do index plus equals 1.
Okay, let's see. Walk me through that again. So you start with a print statement, and then what do you want me to do to it?
So the print statement is going to be towards the bottom, but it's like it's index equals 0.
Okay.
And then second line is going to be while index is less than length, LEN, parentheses, data list.
Is data list just supposed to represent a dictionary?
Yes.
Okay, do you mind if I pass an organization here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
And then, yep, for key in organization. And then brackets index behind organization at the top. Yep. And then the semicolon. Yep. And then this is where I put my print statement, print in parentheses, organization, brackets, index, and then brackets, and then which key do you want to pull? So we could put whichever key you would like to pull, and then after this print statement, it would be index plus equals 1. I just want to see if this would work.
yeah, let's
I
check
have
it.
a feeling.
Yeah, so it's gonna give me an error. Unfortunately, dictionaries in Python do not work as keys. So we see here for key in organization 0, well, it's gonna tell me that this doesn't work because currently organization does not have an index 0, right? There's no key of 0.
Okay. I see. So it'd just be for like a non-dictionary without all the
Yeah,
like subcategories.
yeah. So for example, if I was doing like if I were to turn it this way, so if I were to say list and then I want the items, then it may work. Okay, so it seems like that worked, and it got me to the next one, which was line 35, where Fells is here. So again, I would have to say list the items. Okay, so it looks like 2-point dices must
Yeah.
be figures or slices. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I would try not to iterate through a dictionary in this method. I think in JavaScript you could kind of do it this way. I may be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what language you're referencing to. But yeah,
JavaScript, because I'm trying to get better at JavaScript because I suck horribly at it. So I had to like off the dome try and correlate between the languages of Python and Java to try and make that.
yeah. Well, JavaScript is a good language. It's very powerful and it's super useful for front end development. But me personally, the fact that it's so flexible and that allows you to do so many weird comparison statements, to me, it's quite bothersome because
It's
then,
definitely confusing to me for sure.
yeah, you get really unexpected results when you're writing your code. Okay.
Yeah, as you can see when I sent you that one and it kept coming back false.
Yeah. All right. So currently it's 7:50. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then let's come back and break out into our breakout rooms and try to tackle the challenges of tonight. So I'll see everybody in 10 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone.